Thank you, Richard and Asha. Good morning and greetings, everyone. I hope you are well and healthy. To the representative of Parahyangan Catholic University, the representative of HMPSI Unpar, the representative of IRAC, honorable speakers, chairs, distinguished delegates, participants, observers, and advisors, and beloved Parahyangan MUN 2021 Secretariat. I would like to welcome the Dean of the Social Political Sciences of Parahyangan Catholic University, the Honorable Mr. Pius Sugeng, to our faculty advisor, the Honorable Mrs. Sylvia Yazid, as well as Colonel Di Stefanus as the President of HMPSI HI Unpar, and Ashifa Skarkirana as the President of the International Relations English Club. Thank you for making the time to come to our event. I would also like to welcome the honorable speakers for our webinar today, Mr. Eko Junor and Mrs. Avezia Gebi. Thank you for agreeing and making the time to share your knowledge and experiences with us today, as well as Mrs. Jessica Martha for making the time to be our moderator.
Next, we will be inviting Mr. Pius Sugeng Prasetyo as the Dean of Faculty of Social and Political Sciences at Parahyangan Catholic University. To Mr. Pius Sugeng Prasetyo, the spotlight is yours.
Yeah, good afternoon, everybody, especially my colleague, Ibu Sylvie, Ibu Elizabeth, Ibu Jessica, and of course, our honorable speakers and my dear all students of the international relation. And first of all, I have to say my appreciation to this meaningful event, the Parahyangan model of United Nations. I think this is a very important and prestigious event for you, the student. The student not only from Parahyangan Catholic University, but also student coming from cities in Indonesia. So I hope that through this event, you can interact with each other and making a connection, making a networking with students of the international relation coming from universities in Indonesia. And maybe there are some also students coming from abroad. So welcome also to this event. I hope that you will get the fruitful, meaningful event of this Parahyangan model of United Nations. So officially, I open this event and enjoy everything here, and may God bless you all. Thank you very much.
Okay, our first speaker, Mr. Eko Junor. Mr. Eko Junor started studying international relations at Parahyangan Catholic University in 1985, then continued his master's degree at Ohio University in the United States. He also has several work experiences, such as working at John Robert Power Jakarta, English broadcast announcer at TVRI Jakarta, teaching at various private companies, ministry, and news agencies such as Antv, Trans TV, TV One, Net TV, and Kompas TV. As a diplomat, he has served at the Indonesian Embassy in Pyongyang, Singapore, Canberra, and most recently at the Indonesia Embassy in Tokyo as a spokesperson. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome Mr. Eko Junor.
Well, thank you very much, Jessica. I'd like to say hello to POC Sylvie, my fellow speaker, Gebi, and also the honorable delegates. It's quite an honor to be part of this event. If I remember correctly, I actually took part in the very first Model United Nations. In 1988, I was pengurus Himahi, if that's relevant for you guys. And then about a year or two later, we had our very first Model United Nations. And I took part in that. I remember I was a delegation from Finland, and it was very surprising why we had never had a Model United Nations like that. So I come to you today as former delegate to the very first Model United Nations at HI Unpar. I come to you as a diplomat, a real Indonesian diplomat, and I come to you as a humble alumni of Parahyangan University. Okay. Regarding the role of government, I've always known that government was also important, but what's even more important is the role between government, the interplay between government organizations and other organizations, the organizations at the multinational level and also the other organizations inside Indonesia. Let's go to the next, please. Diplomacy is all about three things, I think. First is the government that's represented. A tiny country like the Holy See is a government, and it's just like the Solomon Islands, it's recognized by the United Nations, okay? And governments have their representative offices, like here for one, you can probably guess, this is our embassy in Tokyo. Secondly, there is the role of government itself is about engagement. One of the things that the foreign minister is very proud of is actually our peacekeeping forces. And there's a picture of one, and that's a real picture. It was not staged at Jonah Studio or anything. It really comes from the field. It really comes from the field. And then she is a real peacekeeper, and she's a real Indonesian Marine Corps soldier. And then lastly, but probably even more important, is diplomacy is all about interaction, especially nowadays where presidents and heads of state can talk to each other on the phone or even chat on WhatsApp, where foreign ministers can chat and directly have a response to a particular policy or to a particular event. So this is the basic that you should know. And this is our foundation when it comes to global cooperation. Next, please. As in all conflicts, it's usually based on our pride, our desires. Yeah. If you remember when Iraq invaded Kuwait by Saddam Hussein, that was more of a desire. And then you actually have conflicts that are just based on pride. I know it sounds silly, but that's the way the world works. Whereas diplomacy, one can say, is usually based on welfare and needs. If a government steps in, it's usually based on the needs and the welfare of the citizens. Of course, there are one or two countries that's usually based on the desires of the leader or the great leader or the supreme leader, whatever. But usually diplomacy is motivated by the need to fulfill the welfare of our people. Next. Here's what as a diplomat I come to realize even more and more. Before it was just on paper, like from a Morgenthau book or something. But if you've been assigned to 4 embassies like I have, you get to see that all nations actually want to be able to be independent. Yeah, they don't want to have to contact Indonesia, right? For instance, many years ago, you remember that the Indonesian ambassador in Canberra was pulled out of Canberra. I was actually there when that day happened. And the next day, Australia woke up and they realized, wait, Indonesia doesn't think about us anymore. We are irrelevant. So as soon as Indonesia considers you irrelevant, you suddenly realize, hey, but I need Indonesia to think about me or respect me, like that. But that's the thing, and it goes contrary to our endowment, our real being, which is all nations actually need each other. And even North Korea, as you know, they secretly have to get dollars and foreign currency from suspect channels. But here I'm going to explain that although countries want to be independent, they all end up having to work with each other. Next page. The top picture is the Juche Tower in Pyongyang. Supposedly, when the Kim Il Sung and Kim Il went to Indonesia for the first anniversary of the Conferencia Asia Africa, the Asia Africa conference, he saw the Monas and he thought, I need to make something like that. That's cool. But instead of a gold lined top, it has light inside. What most people don't know is that the only time Kim Il Sung and Kim Jong Il ever stepped on a plane and flew for hours and hours and hours on a plane was actually to go to Indonesia. And even the North Koreans acknowledge that. Their philosophy is Juche. Juche means we are independent, we don't need each other, who cares what every other nation thinks. But the conditions dictate that they have to open an embassy here, they have to open an embassy there, they have to be part of the United Nations. So although you design something that's cool for your people, but by choice, the conditions dictate who our friends are. They have to be friends with us, and we have to be friends with other countries. So there's a discrepancy there that we have to choose based on the conditions that are forcing our country into a particular situation. Next. So kerjasama or cooperation seems to be a word that comes up pretty often when I was mahasiswa. But as a diplomat now, I know that cooperation is just engagement when, okay, we have to cooperate with that country. But there's a more beautiful word out there, and it's called collaboration. And that's when two countries or two associations or two organizations want to work together. For instance, on those relatively rare instances where European countries come all the way to Indonesia to work, it's usually about caring for the environment, it's usually about orangutans and all sorts of things that also benefit Indonesia. Now that's that's what we call a collaboration, whereas something that Indonesia does with Malaysia, it's more a cooperation because it's essential. We're neighbors anyway, so we have to do it. So I want you to, in the framework of the theme of this program, the role of government and organizations in forming global cooperation, I want you to think for a minute about the difference between cooperation and collaboration. Okay, next. So, and when we talk about timelines, and especially now that COVID is here, there's a difference between what you want and what you need. What you want is usually more egotistical, more selfish, and it's usually now. There's a now element to it. But if you have ever seen a Miss Universe pageant, what you need is actually like things like world peace, and that's what the world wants. That the world needs, the world needs. And what the world needs is actually a world without want. Sebuah dunia tanpa kebutuhan. A world where no one says, I want to eat, I want to have an income, I want health, I want a steady job, I want to be able to walk to my school without feeling I'm in danger. And that's what I mean by a world without want. So sometimes as a diplomat, we have to show people that may be what you want, but what we need in the general scheme of things is something bigger, something, sesuatu yang lebih mulia, something more noble. Next. So usually what we can conclude is that there are short-term solutions and there are long-term solutions. And since this is a Model United Nations-based webinar, I want you to see that the UN is also always thinking about more long-term solutions. Although the UN and especially the United States, the United Nations Security Council does have to convene to think about short-term solutions, yeah, after a tsunami or after a force majeure like COVID-19. It's always the ability to sit down and talk about it and find a solution. But the main thing is negotiations have to take place, and they do take place. And in my example here, negotiations usually have a very long-term outlook. Since I have some time, let me just tell you about the United Nations that took place more than 30 years ago in Bandung. I don't know why we had to rent a place outside of Parahyangan University. I thought Gedung Serbaguna was beautiful, but they said it was too big. So anyway, we ended up, I think, borrowing or renting a place somewhere near the Gedung Wali Kota, Bandung. And then I think at that time we were talking about, I think it was Libya or Iraq, something like that. And there was a stalemate. And I remember it was almost 5 o'clock. And everyone was practicing using their rights, speaking, talking. But by about 4 p.m., there was no solution. And remember, every meeting like that, what you want to get is a resolution, right? So I called. I said, let's take a break. And they said, so who are you? What's your interest? And I said, well, I'm part of this United Nations Security Council. I'm Finland. I have a right to call a break. And of course, without the aid of WhatsApp or mobile phone, we sent a paper around. I suggested, let's take a break. So we did take a break. And in a hall, di lorong, next to the meeting room, I said, I called the delegates from the United States and from the other countries, from the belligerent country. I said, look, guys, we have to come to a conclusion. We have to come up with a solution. I know for the record, you can't state that my country believes in this, my country believes in that, but this is an exercise and we want to see how a resolution comes together. So why don't you, America, do this? And why don't you, America, do that? You won't suggest it, but I can suggest it. And they said, but realistically, Finland doesn't do that. Okay, so we found a fourth country that can propose that. So we all came in and that fourth country suggested this, and the America delegation agreed, and the other country agreed. And just as 5 p.m. came in, we finalized a resolution. So I don't know at what stage you're up to, but I think even more important than saying I have to fight for my country is using the United Nations as a way to find a solution. And if you can do that, and then you've actually mastered what it is to form a global cooperation, whether you're from government or whether you're from an international organization. Okay, next. I think that's all. All right, then thank you. It's been a pleasure to be able to present, and I look forward to the questions coming up.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Eko Junor, for the presentation. Very short presentation, but I think we got the essential thing about diplomacy. Diplomacy is about government, engagement, interaction, and how to achieve our interests, but not forget to collaboration with other states. It's not only how to achieve our interest, but how to collaborate and then give a win-win solution for other country. Mr. Eko, as a representative of Indonesian Embassy, do states still believe in global cooperation? Because as we see now, each state like US and then China, Russia, trying to become a superpower, and they try to live the global cooperation, like United States try to out from WHO, UNESCO. What do you think? This do countries still believe in global cooperation?
Do states still believe in global cooperation? Well, it's convenient that you asked during a pandemic, because that's an example of where states have to cooperate. Not all countries are large like the United Nations. They can have a lot of victims of COVID, but they also have the mechanisms and the industry in place to come up with a vaccine. So most countries actually find themselves always wanting something, always needing something from someone else. The fact that, for instance, China or India bisa menjajakan, can actually use their vaccine as like a bargaining chip, shows that in the end, all countries will eventually have to cooperate. So in the example of President Trump, for example, where he signed out of the Paris Accord, the climate agreement, and other agreements, and as you can see, Biden overturned them right away. And in the example of the United States, by leaving the European Union forum for talking about their interests, it belittles the significance of the country. That's why many countries actually have to show up to these meetings. For instance, Indonesia is very proud of our Bali Democracy Forum in Bali, where we talk about democracy. And Indonesia, as you know, also learned a lot about democracy, stops and starts like that. And then other countries actually feel the need, we should take part of that. So in the Bali Democracy Forum, don't be surprised when you see countries like Venezuela and North Korea take part, countries that are not really democratic. So sometimes countries take part in global cooperation, not only because they need to, but they need to show that they are part of the global community. And like my previous example about Australia, when they realize that they're not part of the global community or even the regional community, they feel left out, they feel small. And there's nothing worse than a country that feels, oh man, they don't need me anymore. They don't need us anymore. Okay, good. All right, thank you.
Okay, finally we have 3 questions from audience. The first one coming from Johanna. I would like to ask a question for Mr. Eko. COVID has impacted...
Jessica, I can answer right away.
Okay.
Okay, just to save time. Yes, COVID has impacted the way countries deal with each other. And of course, as a diplomat, it's also affected us too. Diplomats usually communicate in formal ways anyway, like a formal letter, or even sometimes a WhatsApp or a SMS seems too casual, but now we have to do it in other ways. One example I can give you is that I'm usually like the attack dog. I don't know if it's because of my English or because of my face, but I have this courage to come and meet people, even people who hate Indonesia. So for instance, like in Australia, I would have a long list of Indonesia haters, and I would have to meet them, engage with them one by one. Some of them eventually become friends of Indonesia, and some of them eventually just become neutral. But we can't do that anymore with COVID. You cannot come up to someone, turn on a smile and make them friends. Some of you might be looking at me and say, "Pak, kok mukanya kayak gitu, kok bisa jadi diplomat ya?" Well, the important thing is not your face. The important thing is how you interact. If you listen to my talking, there's behind it there's a foundation called what in the broadcast industry we call a smiling voice. So even though some of you might be introverts, don't worry. Introverts sign up to the uh, Kamenlu all the time. What's important is how you engage with someone and how convincing you are when you speak. So when you listen to diplomats or you listen to me right now, know that the real me is very shy, is very closed, and I'm still an introvert till this very day, but I can switch, and that's where the diplomacy comes in. And with the COVID, back to your question, with the COVID, it seems to take away the magic, you know. Persona seorang diplomat jadi hilang. It's not there anymore. I cannot show my uneven teeth and smile anymore. It's just a nice, polite letter. So I hope that answers your question. Thank you.
Okay, next question comes from our president, our IRA president now, Ashifa SK. It's directed to both speaker. What is the process of communication when a UN body needs to address a problem in a country? Mr. Eko, maybe you want to answer?
Okay, as you know, in the UN office, we have a permanent representative there. Now, depending on how sensitive the situation is, the UN Secretary General himself or herself can talk directly to our permanent representative. It might go something like this. Ambassador, regarding your this thing that's happening in your country, it looks like some countries are going to put forward a resolution. Um, so I just want you to know that. And then that ambassador of that country would say, okay, yeah, I understand. Thanks for giving a heads up. Kira-kira kayak gitu. So there's a like diplomacy in general. There's the official diplomacy with beautiful words and respectful attitude, and there's the back dealing. Yeah? The origin of the word lobbying, as you know, is literally let's go back out to the lobby and let's talk it over, talk about the details. So uh, uh, one example, like was it 2 years ago that when Trump finally met Kim Jong Un, they were surprised that nothing came out of it except a handshake, except a handshake and a smile. And it's because the process was missing. Before something is agreed upon, there's a preparation process, and that begins with that little nudge in my initial example of where someone tells an Indonesian representative, you know, it looks like this is going to happen. There's extra attention on this aspect of your country. That's my answer. Thank you.
Yeah, let's go to the next question from Jason. Um, I have a question to Mr. Eko.
Okay, I can answer that.
Yeah.
We'll just save time. Oh, and regarding the last question, I just noticed that Shifa used weapons flow to the Philippines from Indonesia. It's the same. In that sense, Indonesia would prepare a response. So what the United Nations does, it provides a platform where everyone can speak in a civilized way and without feeling hilang muka, without being on the spot and I hadn't heard about that. So everyone is prepared. Regarding Myanmar, everyone, at least in Southeast Asia, Alhamdulillah, they remember Indonesia's role in Cambodia and in other conflicts. So Indonesia is known to be somewhat of a negotiator. So I guess because we have a strong constitution that states that uh, there will be no penjajahan terhadap negara lain. So, and because of that, and because we have a foreign policy that's bebas dan aktif, as you probably heard, we tend to take every opportunity available. I think in this case, in Myanmar's case, because of what social media has done, and because of the COVID situation where everyone is at home looking at doing nothing else but looking at their social media, sensitivities arise. Remember, there's always two parties: people who don't really care and people who really care. I think in this case, the people who really care became sensitive, and here's the thing: they know that Indonesia has the courage to stand up to Myanmar and tell Myanmar. You see, and it's almost there, and it's almost like they're using Indonesia. Come on, Indonesia, tell our country to bring democracy back. So they're using us. So they're using us in that sense. And Jessica, if you don't mind, I can actually use this example to go to the North Korea question with your blessings. Yeah, boleh ya, Jessica, yeah, answer the next question. And I can also tell you that ever since 2001, Indonesia has presented itself formally and even in multinational forums that Indonesia is ready to cooperate because we are good friends with North Korea, South Korea, the United States, Japan, China, and all of those countries. And not many people can say that. Remember that the three biggest friends in Pyongyang that have the three biggest embassies are China, Russia, and Indonesia. That's what people don't realize. So Indonesia is in a position to say, and we did, to say, North Korea, we can help you, we can help mediate your problem. Now, I actually prepared an envelope for the great leader Kim Jong-il when I was stationed there back in 2001. And to me, thinking, oh my gosh, is he going to be reading this? You know, so we had an official letter come from Jakarta. I just had to prepare the envelope. On many occasions, we offered, and the North Koreans politely said, no, thank you. This is not your concern. We want to address the 6 parties involved. And actually, we'd rather like to talk directly to our enemy, which is the United States. So I'm using both of those examples, Myanmar and North Korea, to say, yes, Indonesia does realize that it's in a position to help. It tries when it can. And sometimes people will will put it another way and say Indonesia's messing in the domestic affairs of North Korea or Myanmar. Thank you.
Mr. Eko? Hello?
Yeah.
Yeah. The question about
Australia?
Indonesian haters, especially in Australia. Yeah.
Okay. Thank you. Well, first of all, you have to remember that the larger the country, the more haters you have. Yeah. So in every country, believe it or not, we keep track of. That's actually also another reason why the the United States, for example, has embassies in those small countries in the Pacific. The function of those embassies being to protect nationals, but also to have eyes and ears on the ground. Kira-kira kayak gitu. So when you have Indonesia haters, the problem is when they spread to others. To Jessica, I noticed one of the questions later on is also about awareness. So if I can just answer that sekaligus at the same time. Why do we get into the trouble of making people aware? Untuk apa sih campaign? Well, the thing is, before someone starts to hate Indonesia, very early on it starts with awareness. Babies aren't born thinking about LGBTQ or Papua or orangutan welfare. They're not. it's only when they become aware that they eventually choose a side. Yeah, do you want to hate Indonesia or do you not? Kira-kira kayak gitu. So in the case of Australia, it's almost like we just need to choose the people who are neutral and help the people who are pro Indonesia. It's almost like a wall. Yeah, it's almost like a wall. There's no use trying to break down the whole wall if we can just break it down one wall at a time. For instance, when I started working in Canberra, we had a list of 10 journalists who always seem to write bad things about Indonesia. You know what? I started from the very top, the number one. So I waited 6 months. I didn't call him right away. I waited 6 months, and then I called him and say, "Hi, I'm the new spokesperson. Can I come and say hello?" So I came and we chatted. And after a long process that ended up with me going to watch him play guitar at a restaurant, eventually he not only did he see the light, maksudnya, not only did he see it from Indonesia's point of view, but eventually he didn't write about Indonesia at all. The ambassador said, "What did you do to this reporter? He usually wrote very often bad things about Indonesia. Now he's not writing anything at all. Padahal now he's the chief editor." And I said, I guess I convinced him to see in a neutral way. So when people hate Indonesia or hate something, it's usually because it's something in here. Yeah. For instance, regarding Papuan independence, one way and this is just me. One way I talk to people is that, hey, you remember East Timor, Timor-Leste? Yeah, that's right. You know who Timor-Leste's friends are? No, not Australia. Who? Portugal. Portugal doesn't go all the way to East Timor. Timor-Leste's best friend and the one they rely on for trade and everything is Indonesia. Now, by giving them example, giving them that example, I'm just saying that what's all this separation from Indonesia if at the end we're just going to be their best friends anyway. So you have to talk to people in a very logical and rational way, because people can be irrational. It's up to them. As diplomats, we have to, it's our responsibility to try to explain it in a logical and rational way until they say, for instance, yeah, I don't think that gossip about Indonesians killing orangutan is true. Why would Indonesians kill orangutan? They don't even have guns. Kira-kira kayak gitu. Thank you.
Unfortunately, we still have two questions for both speakers. One question comes from Vanessa Jackson about how has global cooperation respond to the globalization trend, and where does Indonesia stand? And the last one about the win-win solution. What are the guidelines to create a win-win solution?
Okay, can I start first?
Yeah.
Okay. Regarding a win-win solution, that's an ideal. It's a goal, the win-win solution, but it's important to, when you're negotiating, also show your counterpart, the other side, that this is what you're getting, this is what you're getting, this is what you're getting, and minimize what we're getting. Sometimes, right, the end of a negotiation always ends up with one party being the sort of the loser, but at least publicly, it's important to show that this is what you're getting. For instance, if and this is just theoretically, an African country dealing with a European country, almost always the African country is losing something, yeah. Or when they're dealing with China, China is always getting something, the African country is always not getting something. But of course, they paint it like, oh, the African country is getting this. So that's what you need to do. You need to prepare those talking points of menghibur, where you're telling the other party this is what you're going to get. Now, the question about you said that the pandemic might be causing de-globalization. Well, then you haven't been talking to people in Bali or people in Italy, where they feel very proud. You know, oh, we don't need other countries. When actually 6 or 7 or 20 million people come to their country every year, and you know what? Guess what? These communities, these Italians or Germans, then they realize, oh my gosh, the pandemic has made us realize that all these people coming, orang-orang cerewet ini, orang-orang Indonesia, orang-orang dari RRT dan lain sebagainya, they actually bring in money. And that message goes up to the government, and the government also realizes that, oh my gosh, with the pandemic, we get to see that all these people coming in, where we're opening borders, is actually supporting our country. Lihat aja Bali, the first country, the very first, sorry, the first province that was in trouble was Bali. And I think in other countries, very proud, for instance, European countries, they eventually realized, damn, 20 million people not coming here and spending money. We do need globalization after all. So that's my argument for that you're wrong, that countries actually, with the pandemic, countries actually realize that they need each other, or at least they need their other countries' money and their tourists. Thank you.
Looks like we already answered all the questions. So we close the question and answer session. Thank you, Mr. Eko, and also Mrs. Gaby for answering this question and also for the great presentation. Thank you very much. The honorable speaker, ladies and gentlemen, we finally come to the end of the part of this webinar. Thank you for your participation. And once again, thank you, Mr. Eko, Mrs. Gaby. It was a pleasure to have you with us. And for all the audience, thank you for participating in PMUN's webinar. We will see you next time. Stay healthy, stay happy, and see you.